You know, in Boccaccio's famous 14th century work, the Decameron, there's this one story that just perfectly captures the wild ups and downs of fate. And today, we're going to dive right into that tale. A story of a love that was forbidden, a separation that was just brutal, and a reunion so unlikely it feels like it could only be the work of fortune itself.
It's a question we hear in poems and songs all the time, right? But for two young lovers back in medieval Rome, this wasn't some metaphor. For them, the price of love was going to be everything they had, their homes, their money, and, as it turns out, very nearly their lives.
Okay, so let's get into it. Our story starts with Pietro and Agnolella. They're young, they're from noble families, and they are completely head over heels in love. So what's the problem? Well, their families absolutely despised each other. We're talking a bitter, long-standing feud that made any chance of them being together in Rome totally impossible.
So, knowing there was no way their families would ever approve, they made a really bold choice. They decided to leave it all behind, their homes, their status, their wealth. They planned to just run away together, eloping under the cover of darkness with pretty much nothing but each other and this dream of starting a new life somewhere else.
But as they got further and further away from the city, their hopeful escape was about to turn into an absolute nightmare. The road ahead was hiding dangers they just could not have seen coming.
Picture this, it's the middle of the night, they're riding through a thick, dark forest, and then suddenly, bam! Their journey is violently cut short. A gang of robbers springs out from the shadows where they'd clearly been waiting for someone just like them to pass by.
Now Pietro, even though he's hopelessly outnumbered, he doesn't hesitate for a second. He draws his sword and just starts fighting like a madman, totally determined to protect Agnolella from these attackers. But in the middle of all this chaos, Agnolella's horse, just frantic with fear, rears up and bolts. It gallops right off the path, away from the fight, and carries a terrified Agnolella deep into the pitch-black woods, completely separating her from Pietro. And just like that, she is utterly alone. She's lost, she's been torn away from her love, and now she has to somehow survive the terrors of this wilderness all by herself.
For the entire night, she just wanders through the darkness, calling out Pietro's name, but her voice is just swallowed by the forest. She's terrified for him, imagining the absolute worst, and of course, she's terrified for herself.
After what must have felt like an endless night of pure terror, the first rays of sunlight finally break through the trees, and with the dawn comes a tiny glimmer of hope. She stumbles onto a small path. With nowhere else to go, she just starts following it, exhausted, but clinging to that little bit of hope.
And incredibly, that path leads her to the gates of a huge castle. The people there find this distressed young woman, and after hearing her story, they offer her safety and a place to stay. So, she's physically safe, but her heart is still just consumed with worry for Pietro.
Okay, so Agnolella is safe, at least for now. But what happened to Pietro after she was carried away? Well, his ordeal was a long way from being over. He fought hard, but eventually, the robbers overpowered him. They tied him up, took his horse, and stole every last coin he had. But then, they started arguing among themselves. Should they kill him or hold him for ransom? And that argument, that little bit of chaos, gave him just enough of a window to escape their grasp and run off into the woods.
And this is where their fortunes just diverge so completely. You've got Agnolella, heartbroken, yeah, but safe inside these castle walls. And then you have Pietro, left with nothing, totally alone, wandering the wilderness. But even with their situations being so different, they were both consumed by the exact same thought. I have to find them.
So after enduring who knows how many hardships, starving and exhausted, Pietro's desperate journey eventually leads him stumbling towards, of all places, that very same castle where Agnolella had found refuge.
He shows up just looking for charity, you know? A little bit of food, maybe a place to sleep for the night. He has absolutely no idea that fate, or maybe something else, has guided his steps to the one place in all of Italy where he could possibly find his lost love. Meanwhile, Agnolella is looking out from a high window, probably feeling hopeless, when her eyes fall on this ragged man down at the gates. And as she looks closer, through all the dirt and exhaustion, she realizes it's him. It's Pietro. I mean, can you even imagine that moment, their reunion in the castle courtyard? It was a complete miracle. It was this powerful proof of a love that just refused to be put out by violence, by separation, or by total despair.
Their story is a perfect example of this old idea of fortuna, or fortune. People back then pictured it as this giant wheel that was always spinning. In a single day, the wheel of fortune had thrown these two down into absolute misery, and then, just as fast, it spun them right back up to unbelievable happiness.
Well, the lord and lady of the castle, they hear this incredible story and are so moved by their devotion that they take the lovers under their wing. They give them nice clothes, throw a huge feast, and they make sure that Pietro and Agnolella are honorably and joyfully married right there in the castle.
And get this, the story of their ordeal and their incredible love eventually makes its way back to Rome. And it's so powerful that their feuding families, touched by it all, finally put aside their hatred and make peace. So Pietro and Agnolella get to return home, not as fugitives in the night, but in broad daylight as husband and wife, completely triumphant.
Their journey, from the absolute depths of despair all the way to the heights of joy, became this celebrated tale, a really powerful story about just how much a determined love can actually endure.
And their story really leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? Maybe the greatest loves aren't the easy ones. Maybe they're the ones that get tested by fate, by hardship, and by the crazy, unpredictable spinning of fortune's wheel.